Welcome to this module from FinDaS. Today we're going to dive into one of the most dynamic sectors in the entire crypto economy, decentralized finance, or as you probably know it, DeFi. Our goal here is to really unpack what it is, how it works, and why it represents such a radical new way of thinking about financial services.
So here's what we've got on the agenda. We'll kick things off by asking what DeFi actually is and how it's so different from the financial system we use every single day. Then we're going to pop the hood, look at its core building blocks, and see what really fuels this system. After that, we'll explore the major players, and finally, we'll tackle that big idea that started it all, decentralization. All right, let's get into it. So, just imagine for a second, what if we could rebuild finance from the ground up? I mean, completely from scratch. That's the core question right at the heart of DeFi. We're not just talking about a new product here, we're talking about an entirely new paradigm that really challenges how financial infrastructure has worked for centuries. Okay, so what is it? At its heart, DeFi is all about rebuilding financial services, but on a totally new foundation. Instead of relying on centralized institutions like banks, it leverages public blockchains and self-executing code, which we call smart contracts. And these contracts, they just automate and enforce the rules of a financial transaction, which basically gets rid of the need for traditional intermediaries. So what makes this new paradigm so different? Well, it really comes down to a few core principles. First off, anyone can join. All you need is a crypto wallet. It's open by design. And everything happens right out in the open, on a transparent public ledger. So you're not placing your trust in a company, you're placing it in code that anyone can go and check. And maybe the most important part, you are always in control of your own funds. And this table just lays it all out, perfectly illustrating the contrast with traditional finance, or what we call TradFi. Just look at the differences in control, transparency, and access. It's night and day. Where TradFi operates on these closed private databases and requires you to get permission for everything, DeFi runs on public ledgers and it's open by default. Settlement can be nearly instant 24/7. But, and this is a big but, that speed and openness comes with a trade-off. The risks, especially around new tech and evolving regulation, well, they fall squarely on you, the user. Okay, so now that we've got the big picture, let's zoom in a bit. If you strip away all the jargon and all the complexity, you'll find that this entire world of DeFi is actually built on top of two surprisingly simple and fundamental financial activities. Yeah, this statement is a pretty powerful simplification, but you know what? It's remarkably accurate. The vast majority of economic activity and innovation happening in DeFi can be traced right back to these two primitive functions, exchanging one asset for another and borrowing against an asset you already own. And here they are, the two primitives. First, you've got token swaps. These happen on decentralized exchanges, or DEXs, and they use this really clever mechanism called an automated market maker. Second, you have over-collateralized loans. That's where a smart contract holds collateral that's worth more than the loan it gives out. These two concepts, they truly are the foundational money Legos from which pretty much all of DeFi is built. So understanding these building blocks brings up a really critical question. If there are no central market makers or banks in the picture, what makes these swaps and loans actually work efficiently? I mean, what's powering the machine? The ability to just swap assets without the price going haywire, or to borrow funds whenever you want, that doesn't just happen by magic. It all comes down to one absolutely key ingredient. And that ingredient is liquidity. Think of it as the pool of assets that are just sitting there, ready to go inside a protocol to make things like trading or lending happen smoothly. Without a really deep pool of assets, a single big trade could totally mess with an asset's price, and there'd just be no capital available for people who want to borrow. So where does all this liquidity come from? Well, it's sourced directly from users like you and me. On decentralized exchanges, users called liquidity providers, or LPs, deposit pairs of assets, say ETH and DAI, into a pool. For lending protocols, users deposit single assets into a big market pool. And in both cases, people are compensated for providing this capital, either through trading fees or through interest payments. This whole process of providing liquidity to earn rewards is often called yield farming. It's pretty straightforward. A user deposits assets, and in return, they get a kind of receipt token, an LP token, that proves their share. Then they earn trading fees, and often the protocol will throw in extra token rewards to incentivize this behavior. This creates this really powerful way for new projects to attract the capital they need to get up and running. Okay, now that we get the core engine of DeFi, let's zoom back out and take a look at the ecosystem it powers. This isn't just some theory, right? It's a sprawling landscape of real platforms and protocols where all this activity is actually happening. So this chart, even though it's from early 2022, does a great job of capturing just the sheer breadth of this ecosystem. It's not just one or two apps, it's a vast, interconnected network of protocols covering everything from exchanges and lending to insurance and asset management, and they're all built on a whole bunch of different blockchain networks. And while Ethereum was definitely the birthplace of DeFi and it's still its center of gravity, the landscape today is very much multi-chain. We're seeing tons of activity on other base layers like Solana, and also on what are called Ethereum virtual machine compatible chains. And critically, layer 2 networks like Arbitrum and Optimism are becoming absolutely essential for scaling DeFi by making transactions way faster and cheaper. To make this all a bit more concrete, it's really useful to look at a couple of the most influential protocols in the space. So let's start with Uniswap, the pioneer of that automated market maker model we mentioned. Now, what's so cool about this slide is how it visualizes the core process. So on the right, you've got the liquidity provider, and they're depositing a pair of assets into the pool. This makes the pool deeper, more liquid. Then on the left, you have a trader who can swap one asset for the other directly with the pool. They pay a tiny fee that goes right back to the liquidity providers as their reward. It's just a really elegant, self-contained system. All right, next up, let's turn our attention to that other DeFi primitive we talked about, lending. For this, we'll spotlight Aave, which is a leading decentralized lending and borrowing protocol. This diagram shows a more complex but really robust system. You have liquidity providers supplying assets to the Aave markets, then borrowers draw from those markets. But notice the other loops here. The protocol is governed by people who hold the AAV token, and they vote on key parameters. There's also a safety module, where AV owners can stake their tokens to act as an insurance backstop for the protocol. This creates this really tight alignment between governance, security, and how the market functions. Now, a system like this only works if you have very careful risk management. And this table shows exactly how Aave approaches that. For each asset a user can deposit as collateral, the protocol assigns specific parameters. The loan-to-value, or LTV, tells you how much you can borrow. For example, with an 80% LTV for ETH, if you deposit $1,000 worth of ETH, you can borrow up to $800. The liquidation threshold, here at 82.5%, is the scary point where your collateral is at risk of being sold off if its value falls too far. This super granular asset-by-asset approach is key to keeping the whole thing solvent. We've mentioned tokens like Uni and Aave a few times now, and it's important to get this. They are not just speculative assets. They are integral, functional components of their protocols. So let's take a minute to clarify the specific and varied roles these digital assets play. You see, a single DeFi token can wear many hats. It can be used for governance, giving holders a real say in the protocol's future. It can be used as an incentive, like we saw with yield farming. And it can also be used as collateral itself, just like ETH or stablecoins. This multifaceted nature makes the design of the token absolutely critical to the protocol's success. So whenever you're analyzing a DeFi project, understanding its tokenomics, which is just the economics of its token, is paramount. This checklist here is a really solid framework for that analysis. You gotta ask, does this token have real utility? Are there actual reasons for people to buy and hold it? Does the value that the protocol generates flow back to the token holders? And does it help secure the system, like we saw with Aave? And finally, we have to address the word decentralized itself. It is one of the most important, and honestly, one of the most misunderstood concepts in this whole space. It's so essential to recognize that decentralization isn't an on or off switch. It's a spectrum. This spectrum is incredibly useful for understanding how projects actually work in the real world. The ideal state, the dream, is fully permissionless and trustless, where the code is truly law. But the reality is that many protocols today exist somewhere in the middle. They might be permissionless for users, but still have a core team with special keys for upgrades. These are often just pragmatic trade-offs made for security or efficiency, but it's vital to understand where any given protocol sits on this spectrum.
So, after all of that, what are the key things to walk away with? Let's wrap this up. In a nutshell, DeFi proposes a whole new financial architecture that's built on public blockchains. It's fundamentally driven by swaps and lending, and that's all fueled by liquidity that comes from users. This has created this vibrant, multi-chain ecosystem where tokens play a critical role in coordinating everything, and where projects are constantly navigating those complex trade-offs along the decentralization spectrum. And this leaves us with a big, forward-looking question to think about. What's the ultimate path for this technology? Will these two financial worlds, TradFi and DeFi, eventually merge into one? Or are we really witnessing the construction of a completely separate, parallel financial system? The answer to that, well, it remains unwritten. Thanks so much for joining me in this module.
If you're ready to go from theory to practice and apply this blueprint to your own project, please visit us at FinDaS.org. We have more in-depth materials and token design support waiting for you.